and Louisiana's complex relationship with land, climate, and culture. My name is Frederick Wood Delahousie, and it is my pleasure to serve as the Chief Creative Officer of Ashe Cultural Arts Center in New Orleans, Louisiana. I can be referred to in conversation by Wood or by pronouns he and him. I am a light-skinned, honey butter brown black warrior poet with brown eyes and thick eyebrows, and what some folks will call a goatee, I call a pharaoh's mane. I am a New Orleans artist, which means I live and breathe culture. It is the soundtrack to our lives. It is the tone of our existence. It speaks to the history in all of us and lays tracks to our lineage, roots, neighborhoods, and the birth of this nation. To live in New Orleans is to plan a part of our lives around second lines, super Sundays, and festivals. We open our windows and discover an ancestor has passed on because the music says that we pay homage to the fallen. To live in New Orleans is to have an intimate relationship with culture and rhythm. To live in Louisiana is to walk to a beat that sometimes only we can hear. We are a magical, mystical, musical place where we sing and dance because celebration is not only beautiful, but necessary. And it's every bit of who we are. And it is my honor this evening to welcome you to Losing Louisiana. Let us begin by paying homage to the land.
I wish to begin by giving thanks to the Creator for the many gifts bestowed upon us. I wish to acknowledge the truly indigenous, the flora, the fauna, and all of our non-human relatives. I acknowledge all of the life forms that preceded our own existence and continues to make our lives possible today. For in our teaching, we the people are the youngest members of creation. I want to acknowledge the ancestors and the elders, their wisdom and contributions from our past, continuing to our present with their wisdom, always guiding us to our future. It is an honor to speak to you. I am of the Atakapa Ishak Shuwasha people, indigenous to the southern regional lands and waters in the place that today is known as Louisiana. We mark our continuous inhabitation, numbered by countless centuries, on these, our ancestral lands, always living between the mighty river and the great Gulf. Our story of origin began with the waters. We continue to live by and depend on the waters to this present day. We are water people. We are one of the many First Nations who marked our time of existence and continue to live our lives in this region, still indigenous in our life practices, serving as stewards on our tribal and traditional lands, working to protect and preserve its bounties, gifted into our care as a sacred trust by the Creator. Many changes have come to these lands. There are newcomers who today lay a claim of ownership to our unceded lands. I will say to them, stating the names of the first inhabitants of these ancestral lands is just the beginning. The responsibility of stewardship now resides with you. It is a sacred responsibility to do all within your power to protect, to preserve that to which you now lay claim, not for self-enrichment, but as a legacy to the future generations. Know that we, the first inhabitants, will continue to work alongside anyone who willingly steps into stewardship. We're all descended from indigenous people from many lands across the globe. And for our collective future, we must stand up and step up to use the wisdom of the elders, our collective knowledges, and will to work to heal our lands, to clean our air and waters, work to return balance to life. This can only be accomplished if we remember that we are all called to stewardship. What we do today will be revealed in our tomorrow, and our tomorrow depends on how we live today. The great circle is real. In closing, I quote the wisdom of an elder and a very wise man. And he said to us, enough is abundance. And in gratitude, I thank the Creator for that abundance. The blessings to everyone. Thank you.
My name is Ed Sarabia. However, that is and is not my name. I am from the Tlingit tribal nation. I'm a member of it, which is from Southeast Alaska, roughly what is called Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, Wrangell, Petersburg area. And we share that area with the Haida tribe as well as Sintians. Names in my tribe originally came and belonged only to families. My real name is Stockwan. That name goes back about 2,000 years, handed down from generation to generation within our family. And all families, particularly traditional individuals from my family, can trace their names and their origins to an individual. The one that started, and it was a female who created it, obviously. Her name was Garakteyi, which in English means the woman who raised the woodworm. And that is my family name, Garakteyi. And whenever I am around, I carry, or sometimes I'll carry the symbol of my tribe, my family. It's not my tribe, it's my family. The one of my tribe is different. But so traditionally, my name, Stockwan, really belongs to my family. But in this modern world, the mortality rate of us Tlinkits and natives in Southeast Alaska has jumped considerably. When I was young, if you hit 45 and 50, you were old. You probably would die. And one of the reasons behind that was we lived off the land and the water. Tlingit in English means tides people, water people, or fishermen. I remember people ask, oh, did you ride horses on them? I never saw a horse till I was about 25, and that was at some kind of fair, county fair. And, a lot of people, again, who believed they were experts on Indians would tell me, oh, you Indians ride horses. Well, no, not all of us. So anyway, my name, Stockwan, is as sacred. Yeah, I can trace my name and my family back at least 2,000 years.
Ayutpeche, Miko Omas, Okata Ansi Hili, bien merci bon Dieu, bien merci pour Hodri. Hello, I'm Chief Capella of the United Homer Nation. And I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you and welcome you to the United Homer Nation land. On behalf of myself, my council, and my tribal citizens, we welcome you.
Yiltol, Anhike Jeffrey Derensberg, Takapo Ishak Yukitiki. I'm Jeffrey Derensberg of the Atakapa Ishak Nation of Indians. And the Ashe Cultural Arts Center, where I am now, is located in a place that Native people, like me, have known for centuries as Bolbancha. It's a word in the Choctaw language meaning the place of other languages. We called this place Bolbancha because it was a frequent trading and cultural interaction zone located between three bodies of water, Lake Oquata, Bayou Shupik, and the river Bolbancha, which this part of the river is called. Bayou Shupik you might know as Bayou St. John, Lake Oquata you probably know as Lake Pontchartrain, and of course the Mississippi River, another indigenous word. Here in Bolbancha, people traded and danced and sang together for many centuries before the first French incursions into the area. Indigenous people still live here. Members of the tribes that were here originally still exist in this place. This was a trading zone for over 30 different groups, including the Tunica, the Biloxi, the Homa, the Chitimacha, the Choctaw, Washaw, Shawashaw, and many other groups, including my own tribe, the Atakapa Ishak. During the early days of colonization, chattel slavery was introduced into this area, beginning with Iberville's first visit. He mentioned wanting to bring slaves here. Indigenous people were trafficked and enslaved in this place. African people were trafficked and enslaved in this place, and mixtures of the two as well. The legacy of indigenous populations here exists not only in members of tribes such as myself, but also in our Creole population of mixed ethnicity people. There are also many indigenous people who have come here from so-called south of the border. They are indigenous as well, and the Americas are their home. Thank you for listening, and please do not forget the indigenous peoples of this area. Do not forget the word Bolbancha. Bolbancha is still a place. Bye.
Thank you. Deep, and humble thank you to Elder Rosina from the Adapak Ishak Shawasha Nation. Thank you to Mr. Edward Sarabia from the Tlingit Tribal Nation. And thank you to Chief Coco from the United Homa Nation. And lastly, but not least, thank you to Mr. Jeffrey from the Adapak Ishak Nation for sharing those beautiful, beautiful words, history, and context onto the land in which we live on and the people who have paved the way for all of us. Many call Louisiana a melting pot because of its rich history and complex ancestry. The story of Louisiana has many tracks that lead to before the development of America. One of those stories is told incredibly by Monique Verdin, an interdisciplinary storyteller who documents the complex relationship between environment, culture, and climate in Southeast Louisiana. Take a look at an excerpt from her documentary titled My Louisiana Love. Enjoy.
We apologize, family. Seems like we have no sound. I'm getting some different texts and things from folks. Can you all hear me? Okay, I'm not sure why the sound is not playing, but we'll come back. I'll figure it out. Again, my name is Frederick Delahousie. I'm the Chief Creative Officer and Artistic Director here at the Ashe Cultural Law Center. So which means I should know what's going on with the sound. So I will figure it out here in the background of things. In the meantime, let me present another video that came to us in the presence of our dear Health and Wellness Coordinator, Mama Jamila, who is not only just a force to be reckoned with as a culture bearer, but also a strong proponent for health and wellness in the community. And she sat down with our dear brother, Michael, at Recirculating Farms Coalitions, and we're gonna present that right now for you.
Good afternoon. It is wonderful to be with you in this beautiful garden here in Central City. Just smelling all of the wonderful freshness that these plants and trees brings, and looking at our neighborhood. I want to thank you for joining us for our second annual Losing Louisiana. The power is with us. But we know that even though there's a natural progression, that there is an ebb and flow of land, that we are contributing largely to the loss of so much land by the practices that we execute and those that we don't. So something like Recirculating Farms is just an excellent example of how growing locally and bringing those foods to food deserts can make a difference. So I want to thank you. I'm Mama Jamila. I am the Health and Wellness Specialist at Ashe Cultural Arts Center, your neighbor, right down the street. And this is Cairo, one of whom we do this work for, so that he'll know these plants and be able to eat this good food too.
Thank y'all so much for having me. I am Michael Richard. I'm a local New Orleanian, 30 years old, been here my entire life. I am the farm manager for Recirculating Farms. I've been doing this work professionally for about 5 or 6 years. Recirculating Farms is a non-profit organization that focuses on everything around environmental and agricultural justice. So that includes everything from doing local and national policy work to providing free classes and also having food delivery programs and food access programs. We really run the gamut of everything around food and social justice.
It's an amazing program. I have personally benefited, and my grandson and my great-grandson and our children this summer from Ashe's Kuumba Institute came down, and they were just enthralled with the information that you shared with them, bringing their plants home. And I want to tell you, our plants are growing beautifully.
Love to hear
We're
that.
about to make a box to put them in to give
Nice.
them a little more freedom, but they've been doing a great job of living. So we're going to have some okra and some flowering plants too, I believe. Yeah. So thank you. So when we talk about giving back to this neighborhood, as I said, we know that this is a food desert. You walk a few blocks and you can find all of the worst food in the world. Fast food, fat food. They call it cheap, but you wind up paying in another way with your health and wellness. So tell us a little bit how the community actually benefits from this farm. You know, do they come out? Are they here? Tell me a little bit about how they benefit.
Yes.
And this little gentleman had to stay with me today, so he's going to be in the frame a little bit.
Oh, good. Yes, we love having the younger generation here. Like you said, we do this work for them. We are passing this knowledge down and protecting the land and the ecosystem for them. So the way that the community can benefit from us being in the neighborhood is by us providing free classes. So all of our classes that we provide are free. This can range from backyard hobby gardening to all the way to how to become a professional farmer. So we're talking how to get land, how to get USDA approval, insurance, how to be profitable, all of those things. We have yoga and fitness classes. We have classes coming up around like Caribbean herbalism. This Wednesday, we're having a mushroom cultivation class. So we really do it all. We also have become SNAP sisters, so we can now sign people up for SNAP and EBT on site. We really try everything we can to provide free resources to the community that can help lift their health and wellness on a total aspect, that's mentally and physically and financially as well. So we have one of our biggest programs and most impactful programs is our bag delivery program. It's all sourced from local organic farmers, and this is created to lower the barriers of entry to getting fresh, affordable food. Not everyone can afford farmers market prices. Not everyone has the resources to access a farmers market, such as transportation, funds, the time of day where farmers markets are held, all those things. So we eliminate those barriers by having a delivery program. It gets delivered to people's houses every single Friday. It's affordable. We don't make any money on these bags. We take a loss to provide this service. The bags are $16 regular price, $8 if you use food stamps or EBT, so half off if you use food stamps or EBT. And these bags have enough food to feed 2 to 3 people for a couple of days. If you were to try to recreate this bag yourself at a retail price, it would probably cost you around $30 or so. So we really feel like we're providing value to our supporters, but with that bag program. And then, like I said, we also have classes that range the gamut of everything around food. So like I said, yoga and fitness classes, gardening classes, health supportive cooking classes, financial literacy classes, art classes. We do it all. We even have some cultural programming that we were looking to partner with Shave more in the future with, around preserving cultural practices. So that's for all the different cultures that exist inside of New Orleans. Vietnamese heritage, Native heritage, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino, all the different people who help make up New Orleans. We want them to feel like they have people who recognize their diversity and also want to help support them in being able to sustain and preserve that knowledge on their own. And so teaching them how to grow the plants and things that they're used to in their diet and their staples and their rituals around food, and around even medicinal herbs and things like that. We want to be able to let people know that despite living in a food desert or living in an urban environment where you don't have much grass or even soil to grow in, that there's various ways to grow plants, medicinal plants, and to grow your food in the city.
Those are really a wide range. I mean, as long as I've known recirculating food, you just shared a lot of information with me about some of the things that you do. How do you get this information out to the public? Because often things are hidden in plain sight.
Yes. So we really try to engage the community on as many levels as we possibly can. So we have our in-person classes. We actually record a lot of those classes for people who aren't able to make them, and we put them online. So they're on YouTube, they're on Facebook, Instagram, they're on our website, which is recirculatingfarms.org. So people can access those classes and videos whenever they have the time to do so. We also try to go out to different community organizations such as Ashe. We also partner with Luke's House Clinic, which is right around the corner from here. Gust Home. So we try to go and meet people where they are and meet different demographics where they are. And we do that by partnering with different organizations who already have access to those communities and whose communities have expressed a want for that. We are a community-led organization, so we don't like to go places assuming that we have the answers and we know what people want. We do lots of surveying and asking people like, hey, what do you like for us? What type of classes would you like? What would you like us to grow in these spaces to put in the bags? We really look for as much community input as possible, so we're providing them with relevant information.
There are a number, when you talked about going to Gus Homes, it makes me think about, we talked about that indigenous knowledge. Engaging that community, not only to give the knowledge, but gleaning from them.
Yes.
We talked earlier before we came on live, we talked about, something I remember as a child, peppergrass, and things that just normally pop up around. Are you gathering some of that knowledge from the elders that are here in this community?
Yes, definitely. And Gus is actually one of those places where that knowledge, we've gathered a lot of knowledge. We've had some people who live at Gus Homes who have histories in agriculture, whether that was farming. Some of them actually have master's degrees in agricultural science, and they have introduced us to some native Louisiana crops that we weren't aware of, things that we hadn't grown before. They've also introduced us to the use of different things that we considered weeds or plants that we just didn't have uses for. They've introduced us to the uses of these plants, and also given us some different techniques on how to mitigate pest damage, and also help with like fertilizing the soil without using actual any fertilizers, because we are a regenerative agriculture organization. We do everything, we don't like to call ourselves organic because we're a step above organic. Everything we do is regenerative. We don't use any chemical compounds. Everything is all natural, and we use nature. We work with nature rather to create very nutrient dense food and also create very diverse ecosystems.
And that's something when you said about working with nature. I remember when I was in Cuba, and Cuba is 100% all natural.
That's amazing. Yes.
All natural. You have to realize when the governments pulled out, they took everything with them. First the United States government and later Russia. So they had to learn to depend on what they had. And what they had was indigenous knowledge and land. And so that's even, you know, teaching their people, as I'd like to see our people learn more, of how food is medicine and how some of those indigenous plants are actually, I think about a medication as well, many of them, I think of so many of them, medications that are actually plant-based. Plant-based that are here, right here for us.
Yes.
So I heard you mention classes in herbalism and medicine. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so we're really excited. We have a Caribbean herbalism class that's coming up very soon, so we're very excited about that. That is our first medicinal herbs class that we have coming up in the most recent years. But in the past, when we had a larger staff and we had larger space, we were able to have a lot more classes around that. But as we grow our spaces, I should mention that we are under construction at the space we're in now because we have lost land in New Orleans. Land access is a very big issue. But this is one of our new sites that we're building up, so we're trying to regain our capacity, regrow our capacity rather. And so with that, we have more classes coming up, and we are going to grow more medicinal herbs. Like you said, food is medicine. So that's why we practice regenerative practices to have very nutrient-dense food, and also so we don't have to use as many pesticides. So we do a lot of companion planting, and a lot of medicinal plants come into that because there are a lot of flowering things that help deter pests. So for instance, we have moringa that we're growing, we have toothache, we have the toothache that we're going to do a tincture class on how to use cat's claw. So we try to use, I have a whole pack of medicinal herbs and flowers that we use. We have been, so for instance at Gust Homes, we actually planted a lot of tea plants and a lot of medicinal plants there because a lot of these plants are very low maintenance. And that community expressed the want for those things because it is an elderly living community, so they wanted those things, so we put a lot of that there. So we have lots of herbs and lots of medicinal things there, and we're constantly open to feedback and constantly learning about new things that can be grown in this type of environment and different uses for different plants.
You mentioned also partnering plants. You know, that's something that I think most of us don't know about, using local plants when to help us to cut down on bugs.
Yes.
Cut down on bugs, both not only in our garden, but that pesky little mosquito.
Yes, yes.
And so many of the plants that we don't realize that are they're here at our service. Can you tell me a little bit, maybe even about this plot?
Yes. So
how you planted this one to feed off?
This plot behind us is a bed of mixed greens. So we have bok choy mustard green, a purple or red mustard green in there, and then we have some green onions that haven't sprouted up yet, but they will be coming up soon. So I like to use green onions in between a lot of plants because they aren't the leafy variety, so it kind of deters pests that way. But I also like to use things that have a more intentional nature behind them. For instance, like marigolds produce a toxin in their roots that actually suppresses nematodes. So I like to plant marigolds around a lot of my beds to help take away nematodes. I like to use basil and a lot of aromatic things to help deter pests because pets are very sensitive to those types of things, mints, things like that. And so I also like to use things that not only deter pests by producing different chemicals and things that try to run them off, but we also like to plant other things that attract stuff as well. So like I will plant parsley around pepper plants because the parsley flowers will attract different hornets that are actually wasps rather that will eat hornworms and other cutworms and things that parasitize our plants. So we're always trying to work with nature and find this balance of deterrence and encouragement. So creating habitat for other beneficial insects, and not just insects, it also goes into the life of the soil as well. The life of the soil is extremely important. I think it's often overlooked. It's probably one of the most important factors of having a healthy growth space and producing healthy, nutrient-dense food. And so we grow a lot of things that help encourage biodiversity within our soil and within the above ground ecosystem. And all of the practices that we use are referred to often as the new way of growing. You hear a lot of talk about sustainable agriculture, but what we're really doing is going back to the basics, honestly. We're going back to the ways that the people who were originally here found ways to not just survive but thrive with nature instead of working against it. A lot of the traditional practices that we used to use were the traditional farming, when they use lots of chemicals and things like that. That type of farming is about man trying to control nature and not go with it. And so here we try to go with it as much as possible because, like you said, nature has all the answers. They're all around us. We just have to find them.
That's excellent, Michael. I really appreciate you all being here. As I said, I know how much our youth have benefited from this, and just the short time you spent with them, they have been loving their plants. How do people, we have a couple of more minutes left, and I just want to know, how do people get in touch with you all?
People can reach out to us on all of our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're Recirc Farms. You can also reach out to us on our website. We're recirculatingfarms.org, and we're also always on the farm 9 to 12 every day on Jackson Avenue, and we also have volunteer events every Tuesday 3 to 6 and every Saturday 9 to 12.
Michael, I want to thank you. This has been excellent. You know, we could talk all day.
Yes.
So we will be talking more and touch more as we work out. I see so many potential for our work to merge.
Yes.
Our work is the same work when we talk about the wellness of our community. So again, I want to thank you for joining us today in our series on losing Louisiana, but not just losing in Louisiana, knowing that we have the power. Each of us has the power to save Louisiana. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank y'all for having me.
Thank you so much to Mama J and Brother Michael for taking us on a small tour of the phenomenal work that they're doing. Again, welcome to Losing Louisiana, a 3-part series brought to you by the Ashe Cultural Law Center that touches upon climate, culture, land, and people here in Louisiana, South Louisiana, and Louisiana in general. It wouldn't be Ashe Cultural Law Center if we didn't hit y'all with a little art. So without further ado, let's add some maroonish to this, shall we?
Let's go. The Maroons in practice, y'all. We're getting ready for the rise up. Yeah. Come on, set it up, Xavier. We're getting ready for the rise up, y'all. All aspects of it. Because, you know, we got the sacrificial aspects, but we also got the celebratory music, sacred music, Bembe style concert at the end to celebrate all the work that's been done and the success that's coming. That's right, I said the success that's coming. Ishegu.
Mokie, Bugbu Yin Inya, ni losing Louisiana Conference. I salute all of you people in the losing Louisiana Conference. Oruko Mini Baba Marcus, Shango Doyin, Akin Lana. Mokie, ni, Ile, Ville, Galard. Ville Galard. This is the land that they used to call the city of the brave, the town of the unrulables, the town of the unrulies, Ville Galard, the land of the brave. Today, this is known as Bayou Sauvage, the Bayou of the Savages. Kinlo Day, why? Why is it called Bayou Sauvage? And why did they used to call it Ville Galard? The reason is because this is the land made famous to this date by the most brave, by the most lion-hearted freedom fighters in this entire vicinity. And that would be the Maroons, the Cimarrones of Louisiana. Some of their most famous leaders, Cecilia and San Malo, led them here in a path of freedom through combat, agriculture, spycraft, bushcraft, and whatever they had to do to exist here in one of the most harshest environments in the planet, the bayous and the swamps of Bulbancha. Bulbancha, the original name of Louisiana. San Malo is one of the Maroons that is the most well-known and rightfully so, for his handicraft with a tomahawk and his superior warrior capabilities which he used to fight and defend his people. His wife Cecilia is also well known. However, there were many Maroons throughout the bayous and the swamps of Louisiana. Some people say there were more Maroons per capita here than Haiti or Jamaica, per capita, because this place was much smaller than Haiti or Jamaica in terms of colonized localities. One of the things San Malo is famous for is putting his hatchet in a tree and saying, woe to any Tuba who crosses this line. So they set a line here in the bayou, and they would not allow their enemies, the colonizers, to set foot in this territory without being killed. That is the martial capabilities of our Egun, the Maroons. I swing this machete today in their honor. The most brave defenders of freedom and the land. So, because the French colonizers could not defeat the Maroons, they couldn't outslick the Maroons, they called this area the Bayou of the Savages, which still holds this name to this date, Bayou Sauvage. Our Egun, our ancestors, used everything in this ecosystem to preserve their freedom. They used the palmettos to build houses. They used the palmettos to line pathways to their compounds so that when you step on it, you would crack and make noise and give them warning. They used the waterways around here to set up natural defenses and barricades so they could pick enemies off in the waterways. If you know the story, you will know that eventually the great fighter San Malo, who single-handedly rescued some of his comrades from slave raiders by himself and killed the criminal slave raiders, was eventually shot in the back not far from this locality, brought to New Orleans and hung in front of the Cabildo. However, never did they ever capture all of the Maroons because the Maroons were too crafty to stay in one place at one time. They melded into this bayou and slipped away to come back at a later time. They even developed their own forms of agriculture out here in the bayou. They traded even with the slave masters or the slave owning class of people illegally to keep their supplies and survival needs flowing. I've heard that they didn't emerge from the swamps in the bayous until the 1930s and 40s, the last of them. So in the beginning of your conference, I want you to draw strength from the battle and the heart of steel of Bugboyit and Gunwa, of our ancestors, who came out here in the bayou and lived the most Spartan, hardest of lives, as opposed to submitting to oppression and slavery. Can you imagine living generations of lives in the bush here with the mosquitoes, yellow fever, malaria, the snakes, the gators, but at the same time, this environment sustained our Egun as well, even though it's a very harsh environment. So I hope that this contribution here in Ville-Galard, the land of the braves, which our enemies call Bayou Sauvage, the Bayou of the Savages, will help to start this conference off right and will help all of we to find our inner bravery to rise up and conquer.
giving so much gratitude, immense gratitude to our dear brother Marcus Akinlana for that wonderful bit of history, and to both he and brother Xavier Molina, and of course Mama Sula for that spirited song we heard in the beginning. It is now my pleasure to turn things over to this phenomenal sister who is the creative producer here at the Ashe Cultural Law Center. Constance Thompson is a native of Queens, New York, and a longtime resident of New Orleans, graduate of Loyola University in New Orleans, and she received a BS in Theater Arts and Public Relations. She wears so many hats as actress, director, event curator, youth advocate. She's been in countless productions with countless companies all around the city and all around the globe, really, including the Playhouse Company in Durban, South Africa, which she was a part of at a previous time in our shape. I would like to turn things over to her so she can begin this phenomenal conversation. Constance, will you join me, please?
Of course. Thank you, Wood. Thank you. And again, thank you to the Maroon Messengers. I think when Baba ended with like all of us like holding on to that inner strength and harnessing it, right? So we can rise up. It leads perfectly into our panel discussion for this evening. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge all of our amazing panelists, Miss Angela, Chief Coco, and Jeffrey Darrensburg. Please welcome to the stage. If everyone could take a moment and briefly introduce yourselves. We'll start with Miss Angela first.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Constance, for having me here with the second annual conference of Losing Louisiana. I am Angela Chalk, founder and executive director for Healthy Community Services based here in the 7th Ward of New Orleans. I am a proud Dillard alumni. And I look at, and I always forget to mention UNO. I did receive my master's degree from UNO. The folks at UNO say I don't give them enough credit, but yes, I also hail from UNO as well. And in about 3 weeks, I'll be completing the requirements for a Doctor of Health Administration at Virginia University at Lynchburg. But the work that I do is here at home. I'm a 4th generation 7th Ward resident. And the work that is done, yes, the work that we do is through a public health lens at the intersection of coastal and climate resiliency, urban stormwater management, and urban agriculture. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Mama Cherise. Please take a moment and share with the folks in the stratosphere who you are.
Hi, I'm Reese and also known as Queen. Education coordinator for the Down Arts and Senior Music and program director for the Big Downtown Book Program, which is my mother.
I think, Mama Cherise, we're going to check in with you. We might be having some sound difficulties. I'm going to check in with you, but we're going to pass it over to Chief Coco in the interim. Please take it away.
Ohelito, homasia, yupiche, miko omas, okatan sihili, merci bonjour, merci pohodri. Hi, and thank you for inviting me. I'm Chief Coco Crapeller, United Houma Nation. A little bit about the Houma Nation. We have over 19 tribal citizens, and we spread out between 6 different parishes. So it's a challenge every day to have to serve 19,000 people. The reason we spread out in 6 different parishes because Lafourche and Terrebonne Parish didn't let our people in school because we were called savages and we were called sardines and different names. We fought this for years. Some of our people still fist fight you if you call them a savage. We indigenous people. We're the first nation, the first land. You go to Congo Square and you see Mahalia Jackson. There's a plaque there. 1740. Houma Indians used to celebrate there. We used to be green corn dancers. We just love to sing and celebrate and bring life.
But and that's a reason why we spread out so many parishes, because we wasn't white. We wasn't allowed in white schools, And right now, one of the schools we fighting for, the first school that was gave to the Homa people, the school board tried to sell, and behind our back, I took them to federal court, and we blocked the sale, but it's still uphill battle, every day, and for our people. So, I just again wanted to thank you for inviting me, to be part of your panelists.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I see Mama Sharice is back with us. Let's try you one more time. Can you hear us all right? I think we might have some Wi-Fi connection issues. I know she's working very hard behind the scenes to join us this evening. So everyone joining us virtually, please just be a little bit patient. But last but not least, because we still have her coming up, please introduce yourself, Mr. Dr. Darrensburg, as well.
Thank you very much, Constance. I think only my mom calls me Dr. Darrensburg, but that's fine. It's good to see you. Taktol Onhika Jeffrey Darrensburg, Takapol Ishak Yukitiki Wishwatukiti. Ya Naboshkin Kata. I am Jeffrey Darrensburg of the Alligator Clan of the Takapol Ishak Nation of Indians. We are a tribe from southwest Louisiana and southeastern Texas. We're kind of recently in Louisiana. We walked up here from Mexico about 4,000 years ago, so not as old as some of the animals, but old enough. Thank you for having me on. I live in the French Quarter and am really interested in the cultures here and cultural preservation. I'm Creole, I'm French, I'm Spanish, I'm Native, I'm all of that, and I'm very honored to be with y'all, and especially with such wonderful people. And Alito, Chief Crapel.
Give thanks. Give thanks. Big Queen. Technology is sometimes on our side. Sometimes it is not, as I'm sure many of us know. But we're going to still hold tight to see if she could join this discussion as well. But I'm just going to jump right into it with the spirit that of everyone who has come before us on this evening, and just kick it off with a question, right? In Louisiana and around the world, communities are facing some really heavy, devastating effects of the climate crisis. And so what solutions do you all think that ancestral wisdom provides at this time? What is it that we need to reach back and get, and hold on to pave a new way for our future? What solutions do you think we can garner from our ancestral wisdom?
Well, some of our ancestral ways, we need to go back to where we come from, to our roots, replant our native plants, our indigenous plants, and that was our tribal medicine and things. But a lot of things we try to do these days, because of colonizing things, we have an uphill battle, all the time. That Hurricane Ida, I have 19,000 tribal citizens. I have 11,000 people that was affected by the hurricane. We deal with climate change every day, coastal erosion. We lose a football field, a land every 100 minutes, and our people live on the water. We water people. We always lived here. People say, why you don't move, because this is where we from, Our ancestors are here, our parents, our grandparents. People love the water. How can you move somebody from the water that can go outside and put a pole in the water and catch your dinner? They talking about, resettlement programs and things. But instead of asking my people where you want to resettle, you telling them where they got to go. So to our people that don't trust the government to begin with, to them, it's like the Trail of Tears, And as the chief, thousands of people right now, that their home is affected from the hurricane. You know, FEMA got thousands of trailers out there. I got people living in their cars or in little tent, makeshift tents in front of their house because they never received any help from the government.
I just want to echo what Chief Coco said. If we get back to the basics, and the basics are using native plants in our wetlands, because everything that we enjoy, the culture and our social history here is based on the Mississippi River and the lands that the Mississippi River has built. And so, in using native plants to help in urban areas to mitigate against both wind surge waters, waters that come in from wind surge, as well as urban flooding, those native plants play a role and it works. At its capacity, a mature cypress tree can uptake 1,000 gallons of water. I was looking at the saw palmettos in Bayou Sauvage. They also uptake water. The sassafras that we grow native here is not only for seasoning our gumbo, but can be used as a poultice for burns. And how do I know this? Not only because I've read it, but because I've experienced it. And the work that Healthy Community Services is doing along with the Waterwise Gulf South Collective has demonstrated that to the tune of managing almost 96,000 gallons of water per storm event. By the end of this year, we will have reached that capacity. So in using native plants and trees, and so it works. It's been demonstrated, and the communities of Treme, 7th Ward, and the Bunny Front area have the tangible assets to prove that it works.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What about you, Jeffrey? I'm learning, I'm receiving, I'm soaking it in, I'm listening.
Well, my tribe has also lived very close to the water for a long time, so much so that in our tribal creation myth, we literally walked out of the Gulf of Mexico onto the land where we are now. I will say this, that there's many native technologies for controlling the water or preventing coastal erosion. One of them is shell middens. I recently learned that shells are being recycled from the Houston metro area restaurants, oyster shells, and used to be put on the shore to prevent coastal erosion. And it was great to see this news of this new program that Indigenous peoples have been doing in Louisiana for thousands of years. There are shell middens even on the outskirts of the city where I live, which is supposedly a very modern city. Also, though, more important than specific technologies, there are two things. One, our Indigenous relationship with the land. Indigenous peoples, we, in spite of the myth, never lived in wilderness, ever. If we lived in a forest, we would have planted that forest. If we lived on the sea, we probably had all kinds of structures we had made. We were very good at engineering forests and water. And at the time of colonial incursions here, beginning in the 1690s, we were probably the most advanced people in the world at that kind of engineering, which is why, and especially with agriculture, which is why there's so many indigenous plants people eat today, plants like chocolate and hot peppers and red beans, and of course, the most popular plant in the world, corn. But there's something else that indigenous people bring to the climate change discussion, and that is that we did not have societies that permitted poverty. Whatever the fate of one person in the village was the fate of the whole village. We had no concept of one person should get all the goods and then everybody else would suffer. Maybe you can aspire to be that person. There's no concept like that in our tribes here. And I think one of the most important things about climate change is that the people who are benefiting from it do not care about what happens to everyone else. They want it, all of the spoils for themselves. And what happens to us on the coast, what happens to people of color affected by this, what happens to people and areas and lands and animals who are destroyed by climate change, who are destroyed by erosion. They don't care because they're getting some sort of benefit for themselves, for their family, for their people. And that's a spiritual problem of utter selfishness, allowing anything to be destroyed for one's own benefit. And in indigenous cultures, that's just not part of our value system. And I think we have all the technology to address this right now. And there's so much wonderful technology, new and old, indigenous old technology and modern scientific technology for helping with global warming and climate change. But the thing that is hardest to do is to rid the world of a rule of selfish people who only want things for themselves and not for what's good for their village, for other people, for the whole world. And that's an indigenous bit of wisdom we can bring. And, a lot of people have this wisdom, and I hope that it comes to pass that this wisdom is shared more.
And can I follow up with Dr. Darrensburg? I'll join your mother in that one, calling you Dr. Darrensburg. Statistically, when folks that don't reside in coastal communities look at, and I'll speak to Louisiana, it's a means or a probability or what's an acceptable level. And what I'm getting at is that when I testified before Congress, the other scientist that was on the panel stated that the benefit or the risk was not that great because it was only 1%. And my question to that scientist was that 1% represented my neighbors in Southeast Louisiana? It represented me. And so how can you put a value on 1%? 1% is someone in this state. And I took offense to that. And I called him on that. And as a result of that, Congress then moved to send more monies to Louisiana for coastal restoration. We can't battle Mother Nature, but we can, because we've damaged it, we can certainly work to mitigate and come up with some innovative and adaptive strategies using the wisdom of our ancestor and marry it along with some of the benefits of science. And, wherever you may fall at on the line for science, it's personal. If you're experiencing displacement from your home and you have to migrate to somewhere else that the government says, hey, this is where you should be. It's personal if you can no longer visit your ancestral burial grounds. It's personal if you can't continue with the regular social norms and cultural heritage that you have. If someone tells you you can no longer live here because the sea is coming at you. And so when people ask me, why do I continue to live in Louisiana? I ask them, why do you live where you live? Because we're all suffering the effects of climate change.
Right.
What we're going to do in order to reduce those effects of climate change. We can't outrun Mother Nature. I don't care where you think you can go at. Wildfires in the West, floodwaters in the Tennessee and in Northeast, snow in Louisiana. So why would you tell someone to say, why do you live where you live? Why do you live where you live?
It's not only climate change and coastal erosion. A lot of our damage down here in Louisiana is done man-made from our oil companies and things that, they drug out canals and things because they didn't want to take the long way around to get to their rigs and things. So they cut out these canals and things. Salt water came in, killed our trees, killed our plants. So we have no more storm protection. Lower part of Jefferson Parish, where I have hundreds of people that live, they had 12 to 15 foot of water. They had 3 to 4 foot of mud in their yard that came from the Gulf because they had no storm, no protection. But further up, where they feel more important people are around the cities and things, like even in Lafitte, further up in the town of Jean Lafitte, they have levee protection to protect them people. But the lower part, the black and brown people, the local, the poor communities, to them, oh, it ain't worth it, So how can, one of my biggest problems is, United States is one of the richest countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they take care of their first people? But they'll send billions of dollars to other countries to help them, Why you don't take care of the first people that we're here? They can, other countries can build islands and things in a matter of weeks. Why they can't take some of this money and build protections around our little communities? To them, we don't matter, but to us, we matter. We the heart and soul of Louisiana.
And Chief Coco, I'm going to say, take a word from the late Malcolm X. We can change this today. It's going to depend on how much will we, the people, have to vote out those people who tell us that oil and gas is good for us. How long will we continue to be bamboozled and hoodwinked? Is the question that I have to ask, not just of your people, but for everyone who is involved in it. And when I say your people, that means me as well. How long will we continue to let the same elected officials get in and do nothing for us? They show up at election season and they promise this, that, and the other. We have to start holding elected officials accountable and hold their feet to the fire and make the issues what our issues are, the issues that they're going to address when we send them both to the city council, the mayor's office, the state legislature, all the way up to Congress. And I'm here to tell you, with that $1.2 trillion coming down, and I think Louisiana is expected to get $740 billion. That's a lot of money. So what are we going to do as citizens of this state? How are we going to hold people accountable? And oil and gas, and I'll say this, oil and gas is not just going to pick up those oil refineries and pipelines and leave, but we can make sure that they're held accountable to make sure that they're maintained properly.
And to make sure that they're held accountable to clean up the mess they make, But one of the biggest problems we face all the time is divide and conquer. As long as we only worrying about us and not our community and come together and fight together, we will never get nowhere. But strength's in numbers, You can hold your hand like this, you ain't gonna grab nothing. But once you do this, you know how much power we have? We come together, we can rule these politicians. There's 15 tribes in Louisiana. I tell the other 14 chiefs the same thing. You know how much power we had if we came together and fight together?
Collective strength, collective unity.
Again, divide and conquer. If I got them fighting each other, we ain't got to worry about them fighting us.
Right. That's just what also Jeffrey was speaking to. If we view as just one person as suffering alone, their suffering doesn't have to deal with our suffering. That's how we all suffer collectively, whether we like to admit it or not. In some aspects, what is hurting one person is hurting all of us. So, another question, and then I'm going to take some questions from our Facebook and YouTube audiences. So please drop whatever you want to share with us in the comments. I'll be sure to look at that. But so, Miss Angela, as you were speaking, it begs me to question, do we really feel as though this change is possible in Louisiana, especially when we have, elected leaders who say that they are beholden, to community, but really are beholden to the oil and gas industries. I also wanted to just lift up and say that Miss Monique Harden cannot be with us this evening, so that is why you have me in her place. But she also shared some questions that she also wanted to ask all of you, and she wanted to lift up like a case in point specifically that Governor Edwards, who didn't run for re-election as a pro-oil and gas governor, but who is promoting the underground dumping of massive amounts of industrial carbon pollution that will extend the burning of oil and gas in our communities. So do we really believe that change is possible?
Absolutely, change is possible. And it's possible because the actions are being led by everyday citizens. The actions are community led. So it's just a matter of harnessing all of that collective leadership, no matter where you're at in this state, for the purposes that benefit us. Let's face it, and there are some folks who live in the area known as Cancer Alley that won't speak out against oil and gas because that's how they make their livelihood. But I would ask them this question: what type of livelihood do you have if you're if there's a high prevalence of cancer in your communities, if you can't grow food because of the contaminants in the soil, if your kids can't go to school because they're having respiratory illnesses. So what is that what you're willing to trade off for because you're afraid of losing a job? We live in the greatest state with most of the natural resources that can be used in a sustainable way, and we are just not harvesting it. If you walk down to the Mississippi River or go out on the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and I've had the privilege of seeing our state by land, by boat, and with the sea boats and being in the marshes, you will know that our land is being built back by community organizations. And Dr. Darrensburg, in Southeast Louisiana, we are having those oyster shell reefs that are building back the land. But what is the will of the people? How much are we willing to say enough is enough? I look at the folks in St. James Parish with the plastics, Formosan Plastics plant. If those folks if one person had not taken the step forward to say enough is enough, the ancestral burial ground of our African Americans would have been razed, and that area would now be producing those harmful plastics. So we can start with a little change personally, and then collectively we can make that change to our policymakers and decision makers, because we all live here. It's just how much are we willing to put at risk?
Powerful. The will of the people, and what are we willing? How much are we willing to say like enough is enough? That was two snapshots that I take away. But so it's not all about Constance. Some folks are chiming in with some questions. So one we have coming in from Mama Jamila.
Look, San Milo and the Civil Rights Movement, almost 200 years apart, but those were pivoting points in our history. So what are we going to do?
Ashe. So Mama Jamila asks, what can one do to become a part and available of the services and the work that everyone is doing on this panel? What would you tell everyone? How can they get involved or become more knowledgeable? Because sometimes it's not only just about being involved, like in the sense of like joining a group or standing out on the front lines or advocating in City Hall. But some folks also want to know, how can they bring this wisdom back to also their friends, their family members?
Read, and then whatever it is that you read. Reading is fundamental, and that statement is true today as it was 30 years ago. And bring your information to the community that you live in. Start in your own kitchen, and then bring it to the community that you live in. Knowledge is power, as one of my colleagues, Catherine Prevost, says. Knowledge is power. So read and don't keep that information. If you tell me, believe me, I'm telling everybody. So read and spread the truth, not fallacies.
I would say that there's some great. Oh, please go ahead.
Greetings, Mama Cherise. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I guess I'm having technical. They set up studio at my studio with lights and everything, but maybe I don't know how to use it, so I can't walk around the corner. But anyway, I think for me, as an article said that we couldn't simply create to be pretty. We had to say something, make social commentary, and two of our suits we actually addressed climate, all of the climate control, coastal erosion, and all those things serve as buffers for us, for those communities, and buffers, and how do we abate that? So as an artist, I think we have the opportunity to address social issues through the creation of cultural artifacts or cultural art pieces that are aligned with the things that we are concerned with, especially the children. So we did a whole year of study with the children about being green, and our theme was that year was green and loving. And I feel like that's part of where our work is, currently we have a book about climate change that we give through the book program. And those are the things, we have to start with what we can do. And that I know is something I can do. And that's what I've done. And of course, I may join a protest, but to me, it's imperative that we work with children and instill in them that this is their world. And we want to leave them with a world that will be healthy for them. So that's where my focus is as far as, I don't know if that was your question, but that's my 2 cents.
Well said. That's our children are our future. So thank you for sharing that. And stick with us.
Yes.
You came in on some good parts. You were breaking up just a little bit, but I think we all received the message. Yes. Thank you. We have another question that came in from Happy Hearts. The question is, do we feel as though we have the capabilities to create hubs, centers in every parish to help aid in the collective education and roots of our culture to come together and create change in new ways?
Well, I would like to talk about that. I don't know for every parish, but they're definitely here in Orleans Parish and GNO. There are some really great organizations. We had Recirculating Farms earlier in this broadcast. Let me tell you, if there's one thing I can tell you that's a really rewarding experience where you can really help yourself and your neighbors is grow your own food. Get rid of your lawn. Grow your food. You have this little plot of land, and there's so much food you can grow here. This is a wonderful place to grow food and gives you something to share. I would also say that I've been involved with some mutual aid organizations here, organizations such as Imagine Waterworks or Another Gulf is Possible, organizations such as the La Blancha Collective. These are organizations where people meet up and say like, hey, I have something to give. And someone says, well, I need something. And then the next day, the same person might be saying like, hey, I have something to give. Mutual aid and trading groups are just part of an ancient way of people taking care of each other, saying like, look, I need something. Do you have something? Because it would help me out. And we saw after the storm, especially after Ida across Louisiana, honestly, almost all the work I saw that was being done in Orleans Parish that was valuable was private mutual aid groups who are just people saying, hey, we have something, we can help you out. I went to a center at a school here and that Imagine Waterworks was running, and they had people who were donating food. They had bands that were donating their time. They had school officials, medical personnel donating time. They had attorneys who were donating their time to help people with FEMA filing. That's such a good thing. So maybe like for whatever parish or area you're in, see what mutual aid groups are operating. Just use that term and do some internet sleuthing. And you're probably going to find some people who really want to help each other. And you help them. The important thing, too, is that you help them in the way that you have to help. Each person has different talents, resources, time, etc. But whatever way you have to help them that way. And then you'll be really making a difference. And if just everybody did that, we would all be fine. You know, not all of us can donate $1 billion, but we all have something that we can do. Now, if you have $1 billion, please donate it because you don't need that money. All right.
Thank you, Jeffrey. What about you, Chief Coco? How are you feeling? Do you feel as though we have the capacity and the capability to create these hubs or centers, or, you know, like Jeffrey said, everybody needs to do their own individual part, you know, in the best way that you can?
I feel the government, you know, has the funds and stuff that they would, you know, we should be able to receive to build these hubs in different parishes and the capabilities. And again, going back to our roots to learn, you know, our people used to live in palmetto huts and grass huts and ride out hurricanes year after year, you know. But, you know, and then they get back to what you were saying about Cancer Alley and things. You know, they build these things in poor community, indigenous community, you know, black and brown community. Our people are low income people, and some of them don't have the opportunity to leave because what they have is all they have. I get asked questions like, why you people didn't leave for the hurricane. Well, I have a lot of people that were commercial fishermen that didn't have education. So when they got too old to fish, they ain't had a retirement program. They want a fixed income. I done been to Washington twice to fight for this. It would bring, for federal recognition. It would bring in health programs for our people, better education for our kids, to learn and then bring back to your people. So, some of my people live in the lowest areas and the poorest areas and don't have the opportunity to afford insurance. So they got to pay their light bill or buy their medication. And it always goes back to where our people were treated. We wasn't allowed in schools. My dad couldn't read or write. My dad didn't even have an opportunity to go to school. But our people are so intelligent, they can do whatever they put in their mind. My dad used to be a tugboat captain and push barges from Florida to Texas without a map. It wouldn't have did him no good because he couldn't read one anyway. Our people built houses, our people built boats. And they didn't have schooling education, but our people are so intelligent. But again, a lot of these things are put in poor communities where our people don't have the opportunity to say, you know what, I know, it's rough for my family to live here, but I have no money to go nowhere else. The government keep you in a poor community, that's, and goes back to years ago, they try to
Right.
hold the poor people down,
Right.
indigenous people, black and brown community,
You, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what comes to my mind? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just follow up with what Chief Coco said.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Coco, the generation that I came up in my family, by no means do I come from money. Okay. The very house that I live in, my grandfather won in a card game in 1942. All right. And so the education only comes in different parameters, whether that be from learning by doing or learning by formal education. For those of us who are African Americans in the 1960s babies, we grew up with the responsibility of having to get an education and coming back and improving our communities and doing right by our communities. I'm going to say most of us have, some of us have not. Those who have not have acculturated themselves to what they think is the good life, and they look down upon, others that are less fortunate or don't have. And so for me, I'm always reminded, one, who I am, two, where I come from, and three, in my Christian sense of whose I am. And so, given all of those three aspects, that's why I live and work in the community that I serve, and I will not sell out for a dollar, because the money will come if you're doing the right thing in your organizations. But to chase a dollar, at the end of the day, I still have to look at myself in the face. And my neighbors, I said I've been here I'm fourth generation. My neighbors will knock on my door and check me and let me know when I'm not right. And so that's the collective power that I have of growing up in the community. And I really firmly believe that's what some of our children are missing, because they don't have a sense of belonging and knowing who they are.
Well, they have to know where they come from to know who they are, and again, I mean, you have to go back so you can go forward. As for myself, I grew up a little Indian boys in the bayous, Lord Jefferson Parish and Lafitte. We were always told we would be nothing. You would go nowhere and be nobody. But I serve a greater God that showed me different. I came from one of the smallest tribal areas, 100 and something people. Now I'm the chief. Back then, even the tribe wouldn't look at us because we were so small. But now I'm the chief of the same tribe of 19,000 people. I got to give my strength from God every day. But I thank him from where he took me. And I took that, them telling me you'll never be nothing. you'll never go nowhere. You know, you'll never accomplish nothing. Now, some of our people put that in their head and they stay there. But I tell you, like I said, I serve a greater God. I'm a native pastor. I was a professional wrestler for 25 years, traveling the country. I'm a singer, an actor. You know what? That stuff they try to put in my head, that was a bunch of lies from the devil. And I ain't gonna let that happen, you know? So when I go to communities and I tell all the kids, you know, the only one could stop you from achieving your goals is you. Because people are going to tell you good things and bad things, and you can't control neither one. One thing you can do is control your own mind.
Give thanks. Give thanks. It was, whew, that, you know, I have many nieces. I have a lot of young people around me. And I think that's why I'm very serious about knowing where they come from, who they are, and who's they're beholden to. You know, who are their people, you know, and how do you continue to create and support community? I think that was something that we saw very evidently in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida, right? Because it was a very visible thing. We could visibly see that people were in need, right? However, it shouldn't take a natural disaster to be aware of the needs in our respective communities, right? So how can we continue to keep that same wherewithal, that same focus, and that same lens and that same energy when things are a little bit more cleaned up and it's going back to normal, right? So it was just somebody put in we put in the chat that the Biden administration just today auctioned off millions of acres in the Gulf of Mexico for oil and gas drilling. And it's the first lease sale since taking office. I think that is like an emergency, like a state of emergency. But, you know, sharing that same sentiment with others around you, I think it takes, like Miss Angela said, also for us to read and become more knowledgeable. Somebody said become an internet sleuth. Hey, Mama Cherise. So it takes a lot of like a multi-pronged approach
Yes.
for all of us to come together. Go ahead, Mama.
Okay. There you go. There you go. I hear you. Okay. What was the question? I'm sorry.
At this point, share what is ever on your heart, on your spirit that you've been wanting to say.
Yes, ma'am.
We free falling. Whatever comes out your heart comes out your mouth.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Oh, Mom, we're gonna have to bring her back on. This is only day one, okay? So if it doesn't work tonight, we will definitely do our best to bring Mama Cherise back on.
She was saying, reading is knowledge, and this is what we
Right.
need with our children. But I again, 19,000 people. I have, a lot of people that don't agree with everything. So, I get in prayer and I'm like, Lord, how can I change these people? And his answer was, you have to go to the kids. You have to train them and teach them because the adults already set in their way. Their minds are made up. You can beat the streets, beat their heads with whatever. Some of them ain't gonna listen to you. This is who I am. This is who I always was. So we need to get to the kids and give them the knowledge to change things.
Constance, when you're talking about like that question about the new leases in the Gulf of Mexico, I mean, we always hear in Louisiana that drilling out there can be safe, but that's not really what happens, because when it's not safe, there are no consequences for the people who make it unsafe. So they have no motivation to do that. Louisiana is extremely rich in natural resources. We have all this oil, all this production, but I miss the part where Louisianans are wealthy. We're an exceedingly impoverished state. In spite of all this wealth, it doesn't go to us. And yet it's here, the land here, And we're doing things that have permanently damaged the state. When we're talking about our land loss or pollution, and we're so in love with petroleum, we even have a shrimp and petroleum festival, as if we're going to make gumbo with oil spilled in it. You know, like, and there's two things. There's a cultural heritage we have, and certainly indigenous people here, especially coastal indigenous people like the Attakapo Ishak, my tribe, and like the Homa Nation and other tribes of that area in southeastern Louisiana, we have such a history of working on that water and living on that water and working sustainably on that water. And to very recent times, and even now, many of us still work on that water. And I know the temptation to go for petroleum. People need jobs. The chief of our tribe is a retired petroleum worker. My own father, my late father, was a retired worker at the Exxon refinery in Baton Rouge. I mean, I'm not saying this as someone who's detached from this, but we have to find something else to do. And we won't find other things to do as long as we keep doing the thing we're doing now. And that's an important thing. Working in petroleum is not the only thing people can do.
Mm-hmm.
And all the work we do in petroleum has not led to really a net benefit for us. So much of our state's budget comes from petroleum. So much of the economic activity has to do with petroleum, but we're still an incredibly impoverished state. I could take you half a mile from my house here in Bulbancha/New Orleans, and I could show a tourist poverty they wouldn't even think would exist in the United States. Well, you know, more oil wells is not going to solve that problem. It's going to make certain people wealthy. But I'm not looking for the Biden administration to save us or for any other presidential administration. But we have to do something. We, the people, have to do something. Decide we're going to do something different.
And as you say that, Dr. Darrensburg, you know, you hit the nail on the head. We're an impoverished state. Our health outcomes are some of the worst in the country. Pick one, and it's probably 48th or 49th. The only thing that Louisiana is doing right is that we immunize our kids better. Then I think we're third in the country with providing immunizations for our children. But again, what is the will of the people? And that will can only be changed by community-driven actions and changing the folks that we send to Baton Rouge on the state level, because our issues with our coast is dictated by the state legislature. So, and again, local municipalities, and I was just on a call last week with a local municipality, and they're heavily reliant on the taxes that oil and gas provides to their town. And so when we're held captive by money, then we continue to say or look the other way because we're receiving the money. And in this particular gentleman didn't even understand the concept of equity and diversity. And so I did not have time to educate him about equity and diversity, but I made it personal for him and I just raised one question to him. Does anybody in your family have cancer? And he's like, well, yeah. Well, that's related to the pollution from the oil and gas industry. And I just left it at that. So I let him go on to ponder what I said, because I don't try to make, as my grandpa used to say, grown people make grown decisions. And so I don't make grown people change their mind. I provide the information, valid and reliable information, and you do what's best for your family. Now, you can't come back later on and say, I didn't know, because you did know. It's the choice that you made. And so we all have to live with the choices that we make. And if we continue to make these same choices, then our state is going to continue to be raped of its natural resources and the monies that are rightfully due to Louisianans in whether it's in services or in real dollars, because in I forget the Middle Eastern country, the little small one that has all the oil wells. they pay their folks annual. When you're born into that country, you get a profit from their oil and gas, and even that country now has switched to sustainable and renewable energies by harvesting wind. Oh, I'm going to think of the country. It's one of those little small Middle Eastern countries that OPEC producing countries, and I can't call it. It's off the top of my head. But just think if we each got a portion of the revenues from oil and gas, we could then afford better housing, health insurance, send our kids to school. So again, it goes back to the will of the people. Are we going to continue to be bamboozled and hoodwinked by folks who come around who are in bed with oil and gas, or are we going to think of new and innovative solutions for our state to adapt to, strategically adapt to?
Mm. Were you thinking of Saudi Arabia? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
I had
Just a senior moment. I couldn't think of it. Yeah, but yeah.
You thought of it, it came out of my mouth. There you go.
Yeah. Could you imagine if if each of us just each got 1% of the revenues of the minerals, oil and gas that are pumped out of our ground? 1%, each of us, folks still, African Americans are still looking for their 40 acres and a mule. Well, I don't need a mule. I need a John Deere. If you're going to give me 40 acres, I need 40 acres and a John Deere, because a mule is not going to help me at this point.
But the 40 acres and a mule they're given wasn't theirs to begin with.
Well, yeah, there you go. There you go.
That part.
That's probably why I haven't received it, Chief Coco.
I understand.
Right. Thank you all so much. I know we were trying to get Mama Sharice up there, but anyone in the Facebook, YouTube world, was there anything else? Panelists, was there anything that was on your spirit that you have not shared? Because you shared a lot of things that I'm just soaking up right now.
Well, I think one thing is that and I'm going to make a shout out here, if you really want to get involved with places that do a lot of different cultural stuff, like Ashe, for example. I'm a pretty busy person. I'm not always able to make it to events at Ashe, but every time I'm looking at it, it's like, look, there's a spiritual event, there's a music event, there's theater, there's people talking about some issue. Get involved on it on multiple levels, and the reason why I think the culture and music and arts and all that stuff is important is because we don't just mourn, like we celebrate and live. And that's an important bit of world wisdom that the world is losing, but that Indigenous peoples also have. We have seasons of mourning, seasons of celebration, and that's all important. And get involved in some of these great organizations you have around whatever town you live in. And if it's here, Ashe is certainly a great one to get involved with. And thanks for having me at another Ashe event. It's great. Really happy to be with y'all.
Thank you.
And I would just add that to do something in your neighborhood to mitigate against urban flooding, whether it's a planter box or a rain barrel or planting a tree. These are simple things that people can do that's not that expensive. Get your neighbors involved, and collectively we can make that change. And you can go to either the waterwisegulfsouth.org, waterwisegulfsouth.org website, or acsnola.org website, and see what our upcoming events are going to be.
Sounds great. I always was told, the thing about insanity is doing the same thing every day and expecting a change. You have to make a change. You have to get involved. Again, we got to, teach our younger generation, because, what we trying to do today is for their future. We won't always be around, but they'll be around a lot longer than us. Get involved, in the communities and in different programs and stuff. It's our place to do as much as we can to get the information out there. Now we can't force them to do it, but like you said earlier, they can't say, well, I didn't know.
Ashe, thank you. I'm just gonna just do a quick shout out because I know this brother is not on the live tonight, but he will be on the panel live on Friday. But brother Sage is doing a community cleanup and conversation this Saturday from 12 to 2:30, and that's at the Sampson Playground. I'm going to share some more information about that as the days unfold, so everybody can get a chance to join the collective. But then also, I also want to lift up brother Michael Richard with Recirculating Farms. He has some really amazing programming going on that I definitely want to take part in. So please tap in to Recirculating Farms as well. Thank you so much. Thank you
for
so
having us.
much.
We appreciate it, for us to get our voice out there and be heard, It
Yeah.
means a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We will stay in touch
Thank you.
always, developing these relationships. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in YouTube and Facebook land. Thank you for sharing it. Like I said, this is only day one. We have 2 more days of this amazing programming. Thank you. Go ahead, Wood.
I think I'm muted. Give it up for all the panelists. Thank y'all so much for your wisdom, for your time, for your sharing. And what I'm gonna do right now, Constance, I'm gonna try to bring this My Louisiana Love back in and see if we get this sound up, and we'll end with that. But if not, thank y'all so much. And again, we'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, November 18th, 5 p.m. with another edition of Losing Louisiana. So thank y'all.
Oh, listen to it. They're talking. That's a fear that's talking.
So imagine what it was like 100 years ago. All of this used to be trees? This was all cypress swamp. You see these all of these dead skeletons. Wow. I just thought this is a beautiful kind of tragic vantage point, but speaks volumes for what's really going on in this place.
I want to keep living on our land, but I'm inheriting a dying delta. My name is Monique Verdin. I was born during a springtime Louisiana flood. Spent my first years living in a single wide trailer on my family's land. I loved running barefoot on the bayou side.
When it floods, another type of fish.
After my parents divorced, my mother moved us 3.5 hours away to Pensacola Beach, Florida. I spent my childhood dreaming of returning to Louisiana. "13 years ago, after graduating high school, I found my way back home. I moved in with my grandmother, who cares for my mentally disabled uncle, Neg. I've always loved being with my grandmother, Mateen. I'm drawn to her ways, the old ways of the Homa Indians.
Stretch like a bean. Yeah, like a little branch. So
I had a feeling these ways might someday disappear, so I started documenting them.
where to next? So you put the good feathers in that bag.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the dinner for tomorrow. That's 5 dogs.
Oh,
yeah, and 1 man. Okay.
Henry, Joe, Jack, Jim, and Bob. Great.
My grandmother lives by the cycle of the moon, planting her garden when it's full and cutting her hair when it's new. She collects rainwater for drinking and bathing. She believes prayer has the power to heal. My grandmother told me stories of her childhood days, living with her clan in thatched palmetto camps. They were the indigenous people of the Delta, whose bloodlines were mixed with French settlers. They fished the waters and hunted and farmed on the land. The Louisiana Purchase had forced my ancestors into the least desirable swamplands between the Atchafalaya and Mississippi rivers. The Homa Nation has never been federally recognized. My grandmother just calls herself French Indian. As my grandmother was growing up in the 1920s, the oil and gas industry was growing too, and oil rigs were spreading all around her. On my grandmother's 90th birthday, we took a trip down Bayou Pointe-à-Chien to where she grew up.
Là, il y avait une maison ici, là, une ici, là. Et là, il y avait. C'était en bas, mais combien? C'était notre docteur, c'était notre docteur indien. 4 maisons.
We were surprised how wide open these bayous are. Once they were only wide enough for a pirogue boat to pass.
Et qu'au fait ta partie ici?
Le monde de Bayou de la Fauche était après prendre toutes nos places ici. Toutes les compagnies après ça, Dieu l'a noté.
Quelle compagnie?
Ah, moi je connais pas.
Les compagnies de quoi?
Les compagnies d'huile.
Est-ce qu'il a payé pour le temps?
No, they would come and make them sign paper saying that we were going to have something. And they would give you $10, $15, $20, $25 sometimes. And that was it. That was to take the profit that they were making them sign.
When my great-grandparents marked their X onto those papers, they didn't know how to read or write. They barely knew how to speak English. But that X took away their land and so much more.
we heading south right now?
From the time my grandmother was born in 1915 to the time I was born in 1980, the oil and gas industry laid tens of thousands of miles of pipelines and dug over 9,000 miles of canals. This web of pipelines and canals helps Louisiana produce or transport nearly 1/3 of the nation's oil and gas supply. Unable to trap their native lands, my grandmother and her family left Pointe-au-Chien in 1943. They filled their tank with gas and moved to St. Bernard Parish, 20 miles from New Orleans. My father was raised in St. Bernard Parish. He grew up living the traditional ways and was proud of his native heritage. But when he started school in the thick of desegregation, he was beaten for his long hair and dark skin.
Well, I mean, it's going to be fun. But I mean, if we can't go, I mean, if you go there to make it, don't worry about it. We'll go oh, my God. That's it clean.
I wanted to be a daddy's girl, but my father wasn't always around. We got closer as I got older.
Michelangelo. But I know what to do upstairs. Anybody else want to try?
I'll paint. What is it?
Gray hair. They got blue, gray, and the white.
My father was always a magic man to me. He could make a car run without any gas, and he could make a dying man laugh. But he struggled with the drug and alcohol addiction. My father showed me the shortcut to New Orleans through the back of town of the lower Ninth Ward. There he was known as Julio. He knew how to live on the edge, day to day, hand to mouth, beer to beer. One night on a New Orleans dance floor, I met a man named Mark Krasnoff.
How's the light?
That night was up close, it kind of blurred you out.
Is that an automatic focus?
He introduced himself as a Cajun Choctaw Jew. It was like bumping into an old friend I had never met before. We walked the streets till sunrise, talking about our love for Louisiana. I invited Kraz to come down the bayou to meet my family.
Hey! This is Mark. Mark. Bernice. Hello.
Hello, comment la faire, ça va?
Ça va? He's a Cajun from so flat.
My family felt comfortable with Kraz around. His curiosity was charming.
Tu manges des crabes?
Hein?
Tu manges des crabes?
Ah ouais, bien sûr. Tu mets ça dans une soupe aussi, comment tu manges ça?
On a fait un fricassé avec des chevrettes et de la viande de crabe.
Kraz started asking a lot of questions about my family's land.
How high does the water get when it comes here?
We gotta use a pirogue to go to the road.
You have to use a pirogue boat to get to the road
To get to the road.
from your house.
Last year we had to do that. Just a little bitty storm that hit us.
Has it been getting worse, or has it always been like that?
No, it's getting worse. You see, the land is sinking. You see, more gas and oil you got underneath your ground, the higher you're gonna stay. The more they're gonna pump, the lower your land is gonna go.
South Louisiana is losing almost an acre of land every hour. I started to see a bigger story in the photos I was taking of my family.
Something like this.